You overlapped with Talen Horton-Tucker for a year, right?
Yep.
At Iowa State.
Yeah.
So I feel like for maybe some casual NBA fans, that's not a very well-known name, but there's this NBA Twitter. We're all NBA nerds here on this Zoom. So there's an NBA nerd subset that like is kind of obsessed with this guy and what his potential is. What did you see from him in your year together at Iowa State, and kind of what do you think his ceiling is?
It's not surprising by any means what he does on a nightly basis, because that's just literally who he's been for as long as I've known him. So it's like what I see is not a surprise, but there are some people who are like go nuts about what he does, and like I see it and I'm just like, okay, like I know there's even more that we have yet to see. And I think what people don't realize is that Talen is the same age as the rookies that, like, because we're class 2018, but he's a year younger. So really he should have been a freshman last year, and if he left, this would be his first year. So people don't understand how young he really is and what he really can bring to LA. I think, obviously they're, a championship team, right, coming off a ring, so they have a lot of pieces. But Talen's a guy that's, he's ready for his opportunity, and what we see there. Trust me, there's a lot more to it.
What's up, YouTube? Welcome to the latest episode of The Layup.Line. My name is Dolos, and if you're new to this channel, you should subscribe for NBA videos like this one. You can also find me on a few social media platforms for inside looks at upcoming videos, as well as live reactions to games or transactions. If you follow this channel or my social media, you'll already know that I am a Lakers fan, and actually a Lakers fan that lives in Chicago, which in my mind makes me just about the biggest Talen Horton-Tucker fan on the planet. I love my city and I support the people from there, so I couldn't be happier when a 19-year-old THT who grew up in my neighborhood and played in one of the local schools was drafted in 2019 to play for the Los Angeles Lakers. As difficult as this might be, I am putting that big bias aside to do an objective evaluation of THT as an NBA player. THT is a 21-year-old third-year player who has only appeared in 82 NBA games to this point of his career, while playing a fairly small role for a contending team. If he played for almost any other team, I doubt the discussion surrounding him would be so polarizing. Since Talen is pretty much the last young talent that the Lakers have, his supporters have high expectations and hopes. The fact he plays in a big market has also increased his profile. For example, his critics were not happy when THT was featured at the 22nd spot on a recent Bleacher Report article about the top 24 players under 24. This isn't a new phenomena. The Lakers are one of the biggest fan bases in sports, and so sports outlets cater to that audience because of it, and it constantly brings them clicks. And so some other fan bases resent the Lakers players and their fans for how saturated the marketplace gets with Lakers content. I almost did a similar video last year looking at Kyle Kuzma, who was someone that was legitimately overrated at the start of his career, but hate for Kuzma and the Lakers caused so many people to be completely unaware that Kuzma had turned himself into a solid two-way player who's now getting his flowers in Washington. It's the gift and curse of the Lakers uniform, but it's the reason that I'm taking a harder look at THT to see if he is more of a future all-star or another result of the Lakers propaganda machine. I'll be starting with the negatives so that way I can end on the positives. Talen is not a shooter. He's never displayed a consistent stretch of shooting from 3 or mid-range, and is a player with the ball in his hands as much as he likes. Not being able to shoot puts an artificial ceiling on your potential in my view. It can also limit his use as a spot-up player. Horton-Tucker is a score-first player, and his focus on getting to the rim can cause him to miss those bounce passes to the bigs on screen and rolls. He is a willing passer, but he also needs some more seasoning and experience to get more consistent making the right passing read. THT has some really nice passing flashes that I will get into in his positives, but he's also got some head-scratching turnovers. Trying to force passes into windows that just aren't there anymore, and this looks like an area of improvement as he plays more games, but in a world where he isn't improving his on-ball decision-making, this lowers his ceiling a bit as well. Getting to the defensive end of the floor, he's a mixed bag like many young players on that end. He's got really amazing physical tools that will be covered on the positives about his defense, but when Talen's a bad defensive matchup, he can be really bad. Awareness and consistency on his closeout efforts could improve. Many of his defensive errors start with him ball watching and realizing a second or two late that he needs to be closing out to an offensive player. He's also not that great navigating screens, but because he has such absurd length, it feels like he relies on his wingspan and size to bail him out when he gets beat. Don't get me wrong, it works from time to time, but you become a consistent defender when you can beat guys to the spot and then bother them with that length. My feel is that the defensive problems are caused by his youth and inexperience. He also doesn't have the strength to deal with bigger matchups, putting him in the post, or quicker guards blowing past him. In the end, shooting is the biggest swing skill for him, and how well he develops will be one of the big indicators of if THT reaches his potential. His free throw shooting is promising since good free throw shooting and touch have positive correlations with 3-point improvement. I also like his form on jumpers, but until you see those shots drop closer to league average percentage, teams will play him for the drive and muck up the spacing on his teams. Before I even pivot over to the positives, I'll spoil the conclusion. I do think Talen is a bit overrated. I believe in his potential as much as anyone, but if we're talking about right now, he isn't good enough and his skill sets aren't where you want them to be for a rotation player on a title team. He's also very hot and cold. He averaged 23 points in his first 3 games back this season and has looked like a different, much worse player in his last 8. But I also think that his critics are underrating him. If THT waits a year or two to enter his name in the draft, I'm a firm believer that he would have went in the first round if not the lottery. So he's still that young and talented. I also think if he had landed somewhere with a rebuilding team, the inconsistency wouldn't be as big of a deal and it would be dismissed as a young player getting his reps and figuring things out. Again, I need to point out that THT has only played his 82nd game this season. He was drafted and stashed in the G League his first year. Year 2, injuries forced him to become a larger part of the team and even change his usage. Now in year 3, he's roughly played a full season of NBA basketball for a team that's wildly changed his role and usage. There is all that context that I have never seen included in discussions about how good he is or isn't. But let's move on to his positives and why I am a believer in his potential. Talen is a 6'4" 2-guard with a 7-foot wingspan and a knack for getting to the rim for creative finishes. In year 2, Talen took 41% of his shots at the rim where he finished at 64%. For context, those percentages look better than Ja Morant and SGA in their first few seasons, who are both young guards known for scoring well at the rim. Like SGA and Ja, defenses give THT space for the jumper and pack the paint, making some really impressive attacks and finishes. While there is plenty of room for improvement as a passer, he isn't starting from zero. When LeBron has been out this season and last, THT's on-ball creation responsibilities have begun to include a lot more need for playmaking. In college, THT got to play with Tyrese Halliburton, who could handle more of a playmaking load for their Iowa team, but in the pros, Talen is just being asked to play like a lead guard more, and there's been a learning curve to that. He can struggle seeing the entire floor and where to move the ball in the Lakers' stagnant offense, but I like his knack for dropping off passes to his bigs around the dunker spot when defenses collapse on him near the rim. Looking at his defensive tape, and his best role is when he's asked to defend the ball. His wingspan poses a huge problem for ball handlers. He's long enough to get a few of these pokeaways every once in a while, even when he does get beat. You can even sometimes live with him ball watching off ball because of how often he's looking to just jump a passing lane. He averaged nearly 2 steals per game per 36 in his second season, and he's maintained about a steal a game this season in a larger role. Because of his size and wingspan, the Lakers get weird about who they want him defending. He's capable of switching 1 to 3, and with some 4s, Talen is usually expected to defend one of the opposing team's best perimeter players night to night, and sometimes veteran scorers can just young buck him or outsmart him with veteran tricks. But he's had some really impressive flashes guarding top players. The kind of flashes that give you the confidence about where he can get once he builds on his experience. I mentioned this earlier, but December 2021, in his 3rd season, Talen will finally have played 82 NBA games. He came from the G League, next thrusted into a playmaking role for a contending team dealing with injuries, and is now being asked to play a spot-up 3-and-D role coming off of injury. There are very few 21-year-olds that could play consistently through that context. and maybe the high upside flashes never last and he only ends up being a Dion Waiters type. But I lean towards believing that he can be a fringe all-star player and will at the very least be a solid two-way role player. But that's all I have in this one. I'd love to get a discussion going in the comments. Let me know your thoughts on THT. If you're a believer, let me know where you think his ceiling is, and for the skeptics, let me know why. If you made it to the end of this video, I really appreciate that. You could also do me a favor by liking, subscribing, sharing the video. Any of those things really help me grow this channel and make more videos like this one. Thank you for watching and enjoy the rest of your day.